Hello and welcome back to the Opener Sorcery. It's Devi with Devi's Divination Corner, except today it is not just me. I also have Twisted here.
Yo.
And we are covering I-Ching. So I-Ching is not necessarily my wheelhouse, I will say, because it is not a divinatory method that I use primarily, but we are going to just cover the basics of it. So, do you remember how we stumbled across I-Ching last year?
Oh yeah. Well, to go ahead and talk about it, so actually, it's funny enough when you say last year. From what I recall, at the time of this recording, granted it'll post later on, but at the time of this recording, it was about April 9th, 2022, and we're in 2023 now, of course. So it's been just about a year, a little bit over so. I believe this is technically the 10th and all that. So it is funny how synchronistic stuff sorts it seems to align, quite a bit with stuff we cover or get a little bit into ourselves, and then a year or so later on, it's like, oh, now it's time for you to go ahead and talk about it. Like that sort of stuff gestated and all that sort of thing. Um, and also, it, something else that the last video in terms of the scheduling, I guess, was about impermanence and the nature of change and what our, friend, I guess, Y King himself called maximum weirdness. So this is kind of like a divinatory model that is very much about change, about flow, about, things going, and kind of like going along with the tide, you could say, any sort of nature of the results. But yes, in terms of how we went ahead and started experimenting with it, um, from what I recall, it was more so of I forget exactly what brought it to our attention, but the first time that and then this including you, as well as other people in our friend group and community, what have you, did it was through a group sort of session where it was like I had and I still do have 3 coins in a plastic container and kind of shook it up. And then based on that, you make the lines, which we'll explain a little bit down the line after covering a couple other things. But and in terms of that, we would kind of each have a turn. So I'd have the actual thing, or we're talking, over long distance, and everybody would take a turn to go ahead and get combined sort of result for group readings. And then since then, we've done that method of group reading as well, and also some singular readings, but not as many as I could go ahead and have done to consider myself an expert. I'm definitely not an expert, but I guess relative to you, I have a little bit more of a understanding and grasping on it. Um,
Oh,
but
yeah.
yes, but I will say this: aside from all that sort of stuff, I know that when we were going ahead and brushing up on the comprehension of the well, hey, look, what is it that started off the I Ching itself? We has to begin with how Yarrow Stalks were utilized for
Oh,
it,
God.
general sort of thing, and that's perfect. Hey, that reaction right there is why I want you to start off with it.
Thank you so much. No, so in I Ching, um, let's backtrack a little bit. So we're gonna go the symbols, the trigrams, right? There
Yes.
is 64 hexagrams. 64. 64 different things that it can be. That's a lot. That is a lot, and each of them could, I'm trying to multiply it in my head. It is 3 o'clock in the morning. My brain is tired. Um,
No need to do all that math, but yes,
Probably
there's
not.
a lot of different variations.
There's a lot of different variations. You can get a whole host of answers and anything from I Ching. But what the hexagrams actually symbolize. These are going to be natural events. These are going to be observable things within one's environment. And of course, I Ching comes from China. That's where it comes from.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've got heaven and thunder and water and mountain and earth and wind and flame and lake. And then a bunch of different variations in there. So, in heaven, you've got initiating, great strength, needing, great accumulation, advance, little accumulation, great harvest, and eliminating. Like it, but they're all encompassed within heaven in that sense. Um, or a combination of heaven and then one of the others. Uh, but it has like this whole table right in front of me that I'm looking at. Um, but it is something that can be observed in nature. It could be weather events, things like that. Um, so that's really where it starts from. And in order to interpret it and gather your hexagram, it started with Yarrow Stalks. So technically, you'd have a bundle of 50, and then you'd take one out, and that's like your focus stock, I suppose. And then you'd have 49. And now the ancient way to do it is convoluted as fuck. All you really need to know. Sorry. I just, reading it, my brain was just like, can we not? This is why we have coins. Can we not? Um, but I mean, the ancient way was like randomize the two piles in front of you and then pick up a yarrow stalk from the pile on the right and put it between the little finger and the ring finger on the left hand. That is your second stalk. And so now you got 48 and two random piles, right? Pick up the remaining stalks from the pile on the left with your left hand. Cool, awesome. Then you're going to remove four stalks at a time and then put them on the table. Like, that just kind of makes me want to just scream just a little bit. It's fine. Um, and then process is stopped on that one when there are four or less stalks left. The remaining stalks held in the left hand get put between the ring finger and the middle finger. So, you know, when you're a kid and you're just like holding things between your fingers, that's kind of what this is doing. Now you
Yeah.
pick up the right heap and then you sort it by fours in the exact same way and place the remainder into the next gap between your fingers. So you're just going to have like a handful of yarrow stalks. It's great. And now you got to count them, right? Now you got to count what you have in your left hand. And first total should be either 5 or 9. Okay. Um, and that's going to give you your um, first line. Now, you got to set these ones aside separately, gather the uncounted ones, and then repeat the whole fucking thing. The whole goddamn thing for each goddamn line. And this is why we have coins now. Because can we not? That just sounds horrible. So that's the ancient Yarrow way. Then we go into the modified way, which instead of picking out 4 at a time, we're picking out 8 at a time. And so it's just, I despise it horribly. But I have no patience. If you will learn one thing about me, it is that I have no patience whatsoever.
I'm not going to contest that whatsoever.
But the numbers are the important thing because the number 6, you get the number 6, that is going to be a yin changing into yang symbol. Now, there are like transformative symbols in here. The yin changing into yang is the lowest probability that you will get. Um, but
Are you talking about using the Yarrow Stalks method in terms
yes,
of the lowest probability?
in
Okay.
terms of that, that is the lowest probability. Next is the yin unchanging, which is just going to be like 2 lines right next to each other. Um, Now that's going to be 8. 9 is going to be yang, changing into yin. That's 3 out of 16. Not horrible, not the highest probability. Um, and then 7 is going to be yang unchanging, which is just a solid line across. So
Oh, okay.
it
I see.
just,
So there's a
yeah.
there's a variation aside from just the total amount of stocks utilized. There's a difference between, like, you could say the coin method being like an even playing field of getting a result, and you could say maybe like more so reliable in that sense, as opposed to Euro stocks that there's a hierarchy or there's an unevenness with it.
Yeah, there is an unevenness and kind of like a more up to fate kind of thing, I suppose. Although, if we're being honest, as much as you can say, oh, coin tosses are going to be more even, no, no, the fuck they're not. There is like 51% chance on one side and 49% chance on the other because of the weight of the metals. But I digress. That is
we're
that
definitely
is just like the
we're
random
definitely
shit
closer
that like
together.
stays in my head. Like there's just the random shit.
Oh yeah.
It's great.
Hey, listen, it works. It finds its way to surface in conversations like this.
It
So
does, and then I get called out as the weirdo that I am. It's fantastic. But
nothing wrong with knowing history. Nothing wrong with that, or understanding that. Oh, hey, look, metals, the way that it's constructed will affect divination. Very important things to understand.
oh, 100%.
In terms of like, so for me, manners of divination. Obviously you have your own preferred methods. I have my own preferred methods. More so like I'm more so like half and half on technomancy or like digital manners of divination.
Mhm.
Some are more so tactile, but by all means, you're not going to find me going ahead and shuffling a tarot card deck anytime soon. Any
No,
sort
that's
of
me.
like card shuffling. Oh yeah, that's all you. You can have that. But yeah, so all in all, um, I think that it probably would be quite a bit of a task for the Yarrow Stalks method. But onto the coins, that's more so manageable. And in terms of how it went ahead and got into coins, right? Just to go ahead and make mention of it and not really get into it all too much. This is more so theory than undisputed. Uh, Complete fact is that there used to be a thing called Mongolian oracle coins. That was a system of about five or so coins that were flipped in certain manners for divinatory purposes. Let's just keep it at that. Don't need to get into the ins and outs of that because once again, um, could have been the case since Mongolia is literally just north of China and all of that sort of thing, and potentially there being some influence. But I don't know for certain if such was the case in terms of the adaptation coming directly or specifically from that. But I guess before getting into like so we've kind of covered it a little bit, but not necessarily in totality of like the general like, hey, look, this is how you use the coin modern version to get results and all of that. But first and foremost, before we get to that, I think we should talk more so about the masculine, the feminine, and the yin yang symbol
Mhm.
in of itself, right? Um, just kind of like start there at the core and kind of like make it a little more expansive. So, in terms of masculine and feminine, we already talked about it with our good old buddy Light, and just some more so like I guess in that conversation, just general sorts of things that came to mind. Not necessarily talking about I-Ching or like, I don't think we did in that conversation, but I may
No.
be wrong of mentioning the yin yang symbol, or to whatever extent it may or may not have been mentioned. But right here, what I have is like, for those who are not aware of it, or for those who may need a refresher, right in front of both of us, we have the yin and the yang sort of traits and all that, and I figure it's appropriate that I take on the masculine, and Debbie, you go ahead and cover the feminine and all that. So ladies first in terms of the yin. So the feminine.
Because that's not sexist at all. Oh,
Oh yeah,
um,
definitely not. No.
oh, 100%. No. But Okay. So feminine is receptive, feminine is changing, feminine is seen as chaotic in a sense, which yes, we are, and goddamn it, I love it. Um but it's more of a worldly concept versus an actual gendered concept, if that makes sense. So even though we say masculine and feminine, it doesn't necessarily mean penis and vagina. That's exactly what that is. No, it's just conceptual as like a plug in a socket. They have to go together, and so that's one of the most natural um, couplings, masculine and feminine.
Yeah. Well, of course, conceptual and metaphysical, psychological, all that sort of thing, in more so intangible ways. But obviously, actually manifests physically with not only just humans, but plants and animals and all that sort of things. And yes, biological sex. Okay, you're born with a wang, or you're born with a hot pocket. To go ahead and call it that. Since I was just going ahead and watching something on fast food, frozen food, and all that on History Channel. Um, but
Oh
yeah,
god damn it. That I
but
was
oh
not
yes.
prepared for that.
But yeah, so all in all, when it comes to say more so the masculine, right? It's more so of the so while the feminine is receptive, the masculine is more so like projecting outward, right? More so of the imposing force, more so of the definition and all of that, more so of order in terms of that we having related the chaotic aspect, it being chaos, what have you. To utilize the particular image and infographic here for other words that describe the masculine, we have active, external energy, assertion, valor, dominating, initiating, left brain, and logical, which is in contrast to the yin's right brain and intuitive aspect. And we have conscientious, certainty, quantity, cause and effect, and hard. And then the excess sort of things, like if it's a little bit out of balance, is forcing rigid domination and anxiety. And also, since I was reading off that list of traits, I might as well go ahead and read it off for the feminine side as
Dude,
well.
I can do that. I didn't realize what
Go ahead,
infographic that
go
you
ahead.
were looking
You're good, you're good, you're good.
at.
Go ahead,
No.
take it away then.
Okay. So patient and passive. I disagree. Internal energy, introspection, compassion, yielding, nurturing, right brain and intuitive, um, creative, ambivalence, quality, synchronicity, and soft. Yes, very soft. Soft belly. In excess, it can be needy, confused, martyrdom, and depression.
Oh yes, and most definitely, go ahead and we have to fixate on soft and hard.
Oh,
Yes, most
100%.
definitely.
Yes,
Soft and
100%.
hard. Yes.
Fucking shit.
But yeah, so when it comes to that understanding of the yin and the yang, and they're sort of like the thing about it is, if you ever seen the yin and the yang, which it's a very popular symbol, so chances are, if you're listening to us talk about it, you have, there's, they're even swirls of black and white, but they have a dot within each of those swirls that is of the other color. So they work synchronistically, they work symbiotically, they go ahead and they're expressions of two different aspects of things, but the two sides of the same coin, you could say, since we're talking about I-Ching and coins and all that. And within themselves is the aspect of the other. So it's not as if, oh, feminine and masculine, they're at odds, they're opposites. Like, if that's a very misunderstood comprehension of how opposites work,
No, they're
you
supposed to be
know.
complementary. They're not
Yes,
opposing. Like
yes,
if think about it in terms of magnets. The opposite polarities attract. They come together.
yes.
But it is the ones that are too similar, like positive and positive, they repel each other. So
Oh,
it's
yes.
it's all in harmony. It is all in. just partnership.
Oh yes, exactly. Collaboration.
Yes.
But in terms of the yin yang, that is the chief symbol for the philosophy, the spiritual system, the religion, you could say, of Taoism, or alternatively pronounced Taoism. And, that being symbolic of the eternal Tao or Tao. And, not going to delve into those in of themselves all too much, but just making mention you can learn more about Taoism if you want to, and all of that. And in doing so, I recommend the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, and going ahead and reading that for yourself on the basic philosophy and precepts and all of that sort of thing. But yes, so as was stated before, right, by Devi in talking about the Yarrow Stalks, or preceding talking about the Yarrow Stalks, right, how the modern coin method usually is utilized, right, in interpretations, what have you. We have the 8 trigrams, right, and with the different trigrams, you go ahead and can combine each of them together, right? So you can combine, a trigram with a trigram to make a hexagram, right? So 3 lines, and 3 lines becomes 6 lines, and all of that sort of thing. And I want to go ahead and talk about the different sorts of trigrams that you have, or at least I should actually go ahead and preface this by saying that one manner in which that the 8 trigrams and are utilized quite a bit often is with feng shui, a form of Asian geomancy, as we refer to in the West as geomancy. And in that sort of manner, we go ahead and you can order your room, you can go ahead and order your household, your place of residence, or any sort of location, according to the directions. So as Debbie was mentioning before, like heaven, earth, all these different sorts of aspects that relate to the each of the trigrams, that they in of themselves go ahead and present the different facets of, like, in orienting the room, kind of making more so a space, that is geared towards these different aspects, elements, aims that you may have. So, in terms of the other visual that we have here that we're referencing, I'll go ahead and I will start off with the south at the top, and kind of work clockwise in terms of how it is presented to us. And Debbie, if you want to go ahead and take we just pretty much alternate and
Okay.
all that sort of thing. So first off, you have Li, which is the fire element, and that is in the southern direction. And in terms of this is more so for fame or reputation, right? In terms of the feng shui application. And you could say, in relation to the fire element. Now, granted, we've covered fire in more so a Western sense or in general, and the metaphysics of fire goes in that if you want to, but for this particular interpretation, those are kind of like the key words for that. And go ahead.
All right. So we've got Kun, which is Earth, which is Southwest. And that one's more of relationships, love, and the mother. So mothering energy, nurturing. Woo!
Oh, yes. And then what we have here next is I'm probably going to butcher this pronunciation, but dewy and what have you, and that's the marsh element. Kind of like swamps, marshlands, and so on. And that's towards the west. This goes ahead and deals with creativity, children, future, and metal.
All right.
And on
So
to you for the next one.
the next one, I can't remember whether that's a ch sound or an actual Q sound. Um, I believe it's Kian. Uh,
Key.
yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Um, Kian, for heaven, northwest, for helpful people, blessed travel, but it's also the father.
Oh yes. And now we move on to the north, which is Khan, and this is the water element. So with this, it has to do with the career and the path in life that one may go ahead and traverse and take. All right, and for you, go ahead.
I've got Gen in the northeast. That is the mountain. So knowledge, wisdom, and skills. So what you can accumulate in this life.
Yes. And now moving on to the east, we have ourselves Zen with Zhen as opposed to like Zen as in like, a particular sort of Buddhism or the state. That is in relation to the thunder element. And this right here is foundation, family, wood, and past. So,
And
pretty much going. Hmm?
oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, what were you going to
Oh
say?
no, I had just made a noise. It was an accident.
Oh, gotcha, gotcha. All right, but yes, since you already went ahead and here you go, you got the next one. You got the
Okay.
last one to wrap it up.
We got June, which is wind in the southeast for abundance, prosperity, and wealth.
Oh yes. Oh, and we might as well go ahead and mention it. In the center of this particular one right here, we have Earth once again in terms of physical health and that sort of aspect of things. But yeah, so that's kind of like just a rudimentary understanding of like feng shui and like how the trigrams are utilized in that sense. And then like with that, once again, you take those different comprehensions of the elements of the trigrams, and then through the manner of the I Ching, you create the hexagrams in of itself to get a total of 64. 8 times 8 is 64, or you can just simply say 8 squared. Now, how do you get those hexagrams in of themselves, right? What you do is you have pretty much about 3 to 6 flips of 3 coins. So 3 is to create a trigram, and 6 is to create a hexagram, and all of that, right? So with the coins in themselves, right? You can do it, 1 coin, 1 coin, 1 coin, or it's probably quicker just do 3 coins at once, and depending on the result you get, that will go ahead and be the type of line that you have and you generate. So, in terms of 3 tails, that is going to be a changing yin line, right? So, that will be a changing feminine line. And then when you go to 2 tails and 1 heads as your result after it flips, you go ahead and you get yang. With 1 tail and 2 heads as a result, you get yin, and then 3 heads straight across. I'm sure you can go ahead and guess this by now, changing yang. And in doing so, right, uh, when it comes to the changing lines themselves, they are pretty much like, all right, you have an initial result, but then it flows into another result to kind of make it more so unique than just say a static one. And I think you should go ahead and speak more so about that, Debbie, since you're definitely more so flow oriented in your understanding of things and
Well,
manner of being.
yes, I mean that's kind of just how I operate. But in terms of that, so think of it as you're in the situation now, but that is not where you will stay. So yes, this may be what you're encountering, um, but it's not going to stay that way. Or on a different note, it can be this is what it's presenting as, but this is what it is really. So it's more of a I don't even know how to put it. I mean, it's a great
Yes.
variation and it allows for a lot more of situational awareness in the divination in and of itself.
Oh, yes. And I think with the manner of the changing lines, right? If you want to talk about just on numerical value of how many different sorts of interpretations one could have, it's probably the most expansive alongside tarot, at least from my understanding of the different divinatory systems that exist, and probably exceeds tarot if we're going to
Oh,
be
it
completely
absolutely does.
honest. Oh yes.
Absolutely it does.
So if you're looking for an even more specific sort of manner of doing, divination out of like, however many sort of coin flips you do, as opposed to however many sort of card variations you would use in tarot. You probably want to go with I Ching, but that's not knocking tarot because obviously it's the most popular, at least in the West, and pretty much everybody who gets in divinations like bread and butter, to start off with, or at least for the most part.
I must have been a weirdo. I started with runes. I really did. No, but absolutely it's very very popular. But I Ching is I've seen a couple of different websites on I Ching and they always have said like, "Hey, this is more so for you to discover where you are now and get clarity on where you are now. Using it for future divination is not necessarily the best idea because it kind of fights back in a sense, which I found very interesting. But I kind of love it at the same time because if we are looking more at where we are presently, it helps so much in forming the decisions that we make in the future, in my humble opinion.
Oh yes, yes, it is. While it operates in a flow and a changing base nature of the divination itself, it respects the now, and definitely the whole being present now is very much Eastern philosophical sort of concept, what have you, um, and all that sort of thing. And also, based on another conversation we have had thus far about timelines and that, always ever branching, ever changing, has an awareness of that. Whereas people are like, oh, yes, there's fate or there's destiny. And while there's like, understanding of free will that a lot of people have, a lot of times they kind of succumb themselves to, okay, what is going to happen? It is more so static and not having an open frame of mind of things are ever changing, what have you. And
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, yes, once again, like the changes within the now itself, right? And understanding, navigating that, as you said, to make an informed decision to kind of like aim towards the type of the type of future that you want, the type of like trajectory, and all
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing, as opposed to submitting to some sort of trajectory or destination point.
Oh yeah,
Um,
it's not getting on a train. It's you're walking the path yourself, and you have to
oh
choose.
yes, yes. And speaking of doing it yourself, of course, the I Ching can be done by yourself, and all of that sort of thing. Um, and you could also do it as a group reading. Once again, the method that we have utilized amongst friends, is kind of like having everyone go ahead and do a line, right? Not necessarily like with cocaine or something like that. That sort of like doing the line, but in terms of like having 1 to 3 coins and flipping until you get three results, and with however many coins, and then you charting it down and pretty much passing the coins onward to someone else and doing it until you get six, and making a hexagram and all of that sort of thing with however many people you have at that moment. Um, Now, generally going ahead and having covered all that, I guess that we can kind of go ahead and work towards closing it out. But there are a couple more things I do want to mention. Is first and foremost, whenever I think about the I Ching, I always think about the anime series Naruto and how the characters of the Hyuga clan, so Neji, Hinata, uh, and so on and so forth, right? Their particular jutsu, their particular ninja skill set is that of the 8 trigram 64 palms, and that being more so of a martial arts, hands-on physical sort of style. And that was more so like my soft introduction to the I Ching before I knew that. Oh, hey, look, it's a divinatory system or anything like that. um, and also in terms of like sources or things that you can go ahead and read to further expand your comprehension of the I Ching itself. plenty of web pages and all that sort of thing online. Uh, there will be links in the description for sure to go ahead and help you out with that when if you decide to play around with the I Ching or learn about it, delve into it. We will have links in the description, including a method of having it done for you online that Devi happened to find very recently while we were, planning to go ahead and have this discussion. Um, Along with those sorts of ways of learning about the interpretations or learning how to read I Ching for yourself and all of that, some books that you can go ahead and read is the book on I Ching by Wilhelm Reich and Carl Jung. I believe he does the introduction, and obviously, well, not obviously to everybody listening, because you may or may not be aware of Jung, but at least obvious to Debbie and I at present. Carl Jung, famous for being a psychologist, for Jungian psychology and, archetypes, individuation, just some keywords. But yes, that holding quite a bit of space in the Western consciousness of spirituality and psychology and such. But yes, so there's that. In terms of utilizing the I Ching in, you could say, a more so magical way of like there actually being like a system. So in Western traditional magic, right, and all of that, there's the usual sort of like, okay, the different angels, archangels, the angels of Shem Hamepharash, which number 72, and for those that are more so in the darker, edgier sort of shit, the 72 demons of Goetia and all that sort of crap. Well, in terms of the Ching, there happens to be a more so invocatory or evocatory manner of utilizing it. And I believe that is within the occult I Ching book, The Secret Language of Serpents by Maha Dioust. Um, and that right there, I have not looked into it the most and utilized it the most, but I definitely have given it a good look over several times. Um, and once again, those are just a couple books about that. And not only just for the divinatory purposes, or you could even say in evocation or invocatory sort of usage, but the human design system, if you ever heard of it, is something that I'd say Debbie and I are more so familiar with than say the I Ching singularly, or the invocatory evocatory sort of utilization of the hexagrams and trigrams. But yeah, Steph, you want to go ahead and speak about the human design real quick? We're probably going to talk about it, more so expansively at some point, but just like a general, just for people out there.
Well, yes. I mean, human design is one of those more new versions of, oh, hey, let's do a horoscope, but let's make it new. Now, it does have utilization, and I do find it pretty accurate in terms of how it describes things, but think of it as like putting all of like astrology, chakra system, star charts, things like that, all into a blender and then like sifting it through like a flour sifter, and then it's just like ta-da, we have something. So it takes just a bunch of different concepts and mashes them together, but somehow it still
Yep,
works beautifully.
yep,
um
including I Ching, of course, since we're
yes.
mentioning here, and also Kabbalah, from my understanding as
Yes.
well. Yes, and
So
the
it's good.
64 gates. Yep, the 64 gates in the I Ching are actually, well, they call it gates in the human design system. So the hexagrams are called gates in terms of it being related to physical locations in maps or connected pathways within the human body and all of that sort of thing. And it was developed by a guy named Ra Uru. And as you were saying, I'm probably butchering that pronunciation, but no, honestly, oh well. And in terms of like the system, it's more so, as she said, it's more so newer. It's new agey and all that sort of thing. Just trying to go ahead and come together and put everything into a melting pot. Um, and in terms of, there's many books on the subject, many YouTube and all of that. Once again, if we cover it at some point, which is a good chance we will, then we'll go ahead and get into the specifics and maybe have more resources for that. But in terms of say the 64 gates and like interpreting those, the complete rave I-Ching is a good text to go ahead and read about that. And once again, focusing on the 64 gates and those aspects primarily in one's comprehension. So yeah, I think that pretty much goes ahead and covers it all. Is there anything additional you want to go ahead and mention, Debbie?
Um, can I just state that I really, really, really don't ever want to do the Yarrow method? I really don't want to do that. No, but I Ching has been interesting, and I like reading um, the little snippets for what each trigram or hexagram means. Um, and I have found it incredibly accurate. So I would highly encourage at least give it a try. See if you can gain yourself some clarity in whatever kind of situation that you're in, because it's a pretty interesting system. I'm not sure if I would use it in like a professional sense. I think I'll stick to tarot and runes for that one. I'm good. Um, but but overall, it's really interesting. I would definitely give it a try, give it a read, and see how you feel about it.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much goes and covers it. Yeah. So, usually you go ahead and talk about divinatory methods yourself. But yes, glad to go ahead and give you the assist on this one for sure.
Appreciate it, because like I
Yes,
said,
sir.
not my wheelhouse. Um, it's interesting, and I like reading about it. It's just not my strong suit. But this is Devi, and it has been twisted on the Opener Sorcery. And thank you for joining us, and we will see you guys next time.
Stay frosting the uses. Peace.